Hey, my name is Benjamin Bezemer, and this is our Perspectives of Data Science final presentation, where in collaboration with Neil, Casper, and Taisei, we're going to present about our data science application aimed at safety and security, most specifically targeted towards applications for crime prevention, and Neil will start with data visualization.
Hello, I am Neil Timmermans, and today I'm going to be talking about data visualization of crime in East St. Louis. Here we can see a heat map of the crime in East St. Louis. It shows crime rates by geographical regions, using the colors shown in the legend. The colors represent different crime rates from a color scale. This is a good way of showing data to users, as it is clear which regions have more or less crime, and it is easy to understand for any type of user. Here we can see a bar chart. It shows the burglaries per year for East St. Louis and the US national average. This allows us to compare burglaries over the years and see if we can find correlations between them. This also allows us to see how East St. Louis compares to the US national average. But not only is it important to compare ourselves to the national average, to see if we are above or below it, it is also important to see if there's a correlation between it. For example, if the US national average's crime rate goes up, does the same happen to East St. Louis? Or vice versa? Or does it just stay the same no matter what happens? The East St. Louis Federal Reserve also stated that there was a financial crisis between the years of 2008 and 2011, which is somewhat consistent with our data, as crimes do tend to rise in these times, especially burglaries. And we can clearly see that in 2008 crime rates have gone up, and it started to decline again in 2011. Here we see a line graph depicting how much law enforcement is hired at different years. We can see a correlation between crime going up and the law enforcement going up. As we can see in this slide, that in 2008 the law enforcement went up, and in the previous slide we can see that the crime went up in 2008. This shows that people are taking action using the data that they collected previously. Also, we can use this graph to compare ourselves to the state of Illinois, which is the state that St. Louis is in. And it allows us to see if we have more or less law enforcement, but also once again see if we're proportionate. As we can see, East St. Louis significantly rises, but the rest of Illinois stays roughly the same during this time period of 2008. And here we can see a pie chart showing the crime rates by type in 2008. Pie charts are great at visually representing the different proportions of these crimes. They're very easy to interpret by any user, as they show clear visual data, but also actual factual data in percentages. Here we see the same pie chart, but for 2 years later. Now once again we can clearly see changes, with an obvious increase in crimes and burglaries and robberies, which is consistent with a financial crisis. This is great to allow for comparison, as we can clearly see violent crimes have, well, proportionally gone down, but mainly because of robberies and burglaries going up. That not all crimes went up, just these specific types of crimes. But how will this help policing? We can take in our data from the past and use this to see if things will be in need of change. If it is the case, we use this data given to us to attempt to propose a new set of actions, such as increasing law enforcement or profiling criminals. Then after we apply these new changes and see how it affects the data, in our case crime rates, we can use this new data to see if our approach was effective or not. We can determine if there was a link between our data and our approach. This information can be visualized to show us how to improve our safety and security in general, not only for one city, but for all cities. But also there needs to be a civilian approach. As this data is publicly available to everyone, but not everyone really knows about it as much, we suggest building an app. As not everyone will check daily if the crime rates in their area are higher or lower, we suggest an app that, for example, will be able to track your GPS location and notify you if you're in an area of increased crime rates. This will not only help prevent crimes using data visualization, but also will allow us to collect new data ourselves, and allow us to take feedback from users to see how to prevent more crimes and help policing. Thank you very much for your time, and I will now hand this over to Casper, who will talk about ethics.
Hi, I'm Casper, and I'm going to talk about the ethics in crime prevention. Ethics can be seen as a real guide through data science. One, because it will help to set goals and reflect our values. So this data science application is meant to prevent crime in a certain area of St. Louis. So we strive for a safer city with less crime. Secondly, the ethics will help us to get those goals in a way that doesn't betray our values or violate our moral rules we believe in. So the method that we use is the data analysis will be done in an ethical way. This can be hard because when we are looking for crime prevention, we track people and combine certain data sets, and this has all been done under the protection of the privacy of the citizen. But how far are we willing to go, and how far can we go in this case? So this is really hard to find a balance in. When we hand in some privacy, we get back some less crime. But how far are people willing to go for this? So in the lectures, there are three types of ethical theory. One is consequentialism. This relates the long and short-term consequences of this application. Two is deontology. These are the moral rules. What actions violate them. And three are the virtue ethics, and this is more. This is character or virtue ethic method. And this is what sort of person would you be if you took that action. So this is more personally based. In this case, we took the consequentialism theory as an approach to take the ethics in this data analysis into account. For the short term, there are not so many things that are changing for people, because people are not aware that they are being tracked, and data that is being stored is not used in the short term. But over the long term, it's of course we want to prevent crime, so there would be if the data analysis should works fine, there will be less crime. But at the same time, we have to protect this sensitive data, and this sensitive data can be used by law enforcement only, and this should not come in the wrong hands. So we have to really protect the privacy of the citizens. When the data comes in the hand of the wrong people, nasty things can happen. So for example, when somebody has a job interview at a certain company, and this company has gathered information about about this person, it can be used against them, and this is completely out of privacy laws, of course. So what are the values in this data application? So what is of most importance in crime prevention? Of course, we want to have a safer city in St. Louis, but of real importance is the privacy. And the privacy can only be protected when there are certain measures made and certain rules made in this data application. So those should be made. Another thing is racism. There are recently lots of shootings of policemen that shoot black people, and they say that's racist. So in this application, racism is not taken into account, because these are computers and they don't know about racism. So this can be really effective to tackle the racism problem. So the ethic rules regarding to data science. Professor Jagadish made some rules regarding the data science ethics. So the conclusions do not surprise and only outcome. What this means is that you have to really be careful with what data sets you use and what conclusions you draw from them. So the validation of these data sets is of real importance. So in relation to visualization, the ethics could really help to inform people. In the racism case, you can inform people that this data approach really works and tackles the racism. In the data analysis, you have to be really careful when combining the data sets, that you don't combine sensitive medical data sets of some people, because these are confidential, and doctors are not allowed to talk about it. So the government cannot also use them for their greater good. So the conclusions are that there have to be some clear laws stated for the government agencies, because there's still a gray area these agencies operate in, and they make their own rules. And the, there should really be a code of ethics that highlight the key difficulties and values. So security, trust, fairness, confidentiality, accuracy, transparency are all keywords that really define the importance of ethics in this crime prevention analysis.
Hello, my name is Taisei and I would like to present about the data analytics on the preventing crime. We are going to use crime rate data from East St. Louis, Illinois as our example. This is because this city has high crime rate but not extremely high comparing to other states in the United States, and there are many interesting changes in crime rate over the years, which can be related to the various events over the year, like financial crisis in 2008. As we have learned from Professor Vermont in Big 2 lecture, in order to provide or produce quality presentation, we need to have the valid data. We have to make sure that our data is valid by checking the source. On the first slide, you'll be able to see the crime rate data from 2002 to 2014. And this is provided by Metropolitan Police Department in East St. Louis, Illinois. Moving on to the next slide, you'll be able to see the crime rate comparison with East St. Louis with other states plus US national average crime rate. From here, you might notice that the East St. Louis has around 3.5 times higher crime rate than US national average. While you look carefully to the diagram on this slide, you might find out that something funny must have been going on with city of Sauget, but this is not the case. We have decided to remove the data provided from the city of Sauget, since this city have really small population of 155, and then small fluctuation in crime rate will influence largely to the end result. So we can consider Sauget as the anomaly in this case, or outlier. On the left side of this slide, you'll be able to see the map of East St. Louis, Illinois comparing to other adjacent cities. The red part indicates dangers or high crime rate, and other part which have a paler color, yellowish, greenish color. This color represents the lower crime rate areas. By the way, this chart that I provided is the data for crime per 100,000 people. Moving on to the next slide. So we thought why this is the case. How come the part which have high crime rate tend to form cluster? Two variables that we first came up in mind to figure why this is the case was education and income. So I have collected a couple of more data of these two variables in each cities, and you'll be able to see this on this slide. So I thought there might be some correlations between crime rate and average income or education. In this case, I have to see how people are educated, we have decided to see the acquisition rate of the bachelor degree. I have plotted this data and tried to find the correlations. Sadly, in our example, we could not find any significant correlation between two variables, average income rate and acquisition rate of the bachelor degree, since p-value was smaller than 0.05. However, in our plots, you might be able to see slightly that there might be some kind of correlation with the crime rate with the average income rate. Higher the income, lower the crimes, and vice versa for the lower income households. But on the plot with crime rate versus bachelor degree, you won't be able to observe any kind of correlation since all the dots are mapped in random places. If we were to use big data, we might be able to find better correlations, and then we might be able to plot better graph. But we cannot demonstrate this since there were not enough data. There were not enough free data provided regarding this area. You might be asking us, why are we doing this? Our title of the presentation is Preventing Crime, and this can be done by help of the big data and data analytics. On the last slide, you'll be able to see that picture of the phone, which is displaying map and big warning letter in the middle. this is the first solution we came up with. So we're going to create this particular application which will tell you to be careful when you have entered the dangerous areas, placed with a high crime rate. Crime rate data is not always available. Sometimes this kind of application might not work in certain area where you don't have the enough information regarding crime rate, but you might have different kind of information like household income and whatnot. These other informations can be used to predict the crime rate of the certain area. So developing this kind of app will help the receiving end of the crime, like us, like normal students. At the end, Benjamin is going to talk our final solutions, which will eradicate crime altogether by help of big data. Thank you.
So in conclusion, the specific problem we aim to tackle here is excessive crime rates. Specifically, the information we used was from the USA, but technically this could be applied anywhere. We want to prevent crime rates, for example, ranging from robberies or theft to things like murder or any other kind of unlawful violent behavior. This is a very complicated issue to tackle and has always been a massive problem to any nation worldwide due to the unclear source as to where this behavior arises. Is it from a lack of education? Is it from people wandering off into the wrong areas at wrong times? Or maybe is it because of a nation's low income situation or a lack of governmental organization, etc. We showed that big data can provide valuable information that can give us a base for a plan of action to eradicate this problem. By visualizing data that shows us the areas in which crime is more common, we have moved towards a very valuable first step that pinpoints where we should focus on and conduct further studies. Our primary solution using big data consumer-wise is to implement an application that uses the information available and tracks a user's location and movement, warning the user with alarms or vibrations whenever the user has reached a high crime, potentially dangerous zone, increasing his chances of, for example, getting robbed. This application could actually also potentially be used as a plugin for like any other TomTom or driving GPS app to prevent users from driving through a potentially dangerous zone and prevent being subject to a crime. And this could be actually very, very useful for tourists, for example, in areas like Central America, where driving through a wrong zone could potentially lead into you getting your vehicle robbed, because this is a very common thing over there. On the other hand, if we want to treat the problem straight from its root, we could use people's background information such as childhood, neighborhood area, grades, or parents' background information, or whoever they live with, and eventually maybe feed it to a machine learning algorithm that could possibly predict an individual's criminal tendency in the future, giving us a chance to perhaps treat these individuals psychologically before any crimes actually happen. Thanks for watching.